3, 2. All right. Hello and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, I'm super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. I had a chance to chat with our guest speaker before we started recording, and I'm calling from Argentina. She's originally from Chile, so she's in New Hampshire right now, but we're already trying to figure out how we can see each other down south eventually when the world opens back up again and we can start traveling. So I know she's going to drop a lot of knowledge today. This is a really, really special and important and relevant conversation, especially these days where a lot of things are happening remotely until things get settled and folks can go back to work in the office. So I don't want to take up too much time. I just want to go over some quick housekeeping rules so that we all feel comfortable and confident in this next hour. As I said before, and as I love to start these chats off with, lots of crazy things going on in the world. You could be doing anything else, but you're deciding to spend the hour with us. So with that said, we'd love for you to participate. Right now, I'll give my official invitation to go ahead and turn your cameras on if you feel called to do so. We believe in visibility here at Power to Fly, so would love to see your beautiful smiling faces. Feel free to come off mute whenever you have something you want to share. We don't want this to be something like, you're just watching something on YouTube and people are speaking at you. If you're joining us live, we want to hear from you. So hop off mute whenever you have something you want to share, or use the chat box, fired up. I see some folks are already writing where they're calling from, and I can't stress enough, we want to hear from you. So if you have reflections or questions, your own tips and tricks that you find helpful, please drop them in the chat box and I will flag that to our guest speaker. If you do hop off of mute, you will be featured in our live recording as this is being recorded. So this is also a great time to mention, I know that we all live in a world where, we are multitaskers. We're kind of like obsessively multitaskers, but I invite you to be present with us for this next hour so that we can hear from you. If you do decide to turn your camera on, that's great. If you decide to write in the chat box, that's also great. But you will be featured in our live recording if you do show up today on camera or hop off of mute. If you have any sensitive information and you prefer to be kept anonymous, you can find me in the chat box under Mariella Marie. You can write to me privately there, and I will raise your question or your reflection and keep you anonymous. And then the last thing I'll say is we'd love for you to keep up with us on socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep up with all the great chats that I have the pleasure of moderating throughout the week here at Power to Fly. And then for those of you who have not joined a chat where I've moderated, I just want to take a couple seconds to introduce myself. I'm happy you're here with us. These conversations really fuel my curiosity. I love to be able to philosophize with all these beautiful brains that join us for the hour. So we have Olivia here, who I'll introduce in just a few moments. And Olivia and all of our live callers here, I love to speak about emotional intelligence. So whenever I have the chance, I will try to bring that to the front of our conversation, because I feel like we have a lot of opportunity to develop and deepen our emotional intelligence in the workplace and at home and at play, of course. So with that said, I would love to invite you all to support my passion project that is called the Positive Force Team. You can go to thepositiveforceteam.org, sign up for our newsletter, or of course you can connect with me on LinkedIn. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to our guest speaker, Olivia. Olivia, let us know a little bit about yourself, how you came to learn about Power to Fly, and what you're excited to share with us today.
Well, I mean, some of your chats have been phenomenal that I've been following. They're fantastic, and it's a great positive impact that you're doing for women all over the world, which I absolutely love. And thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm so excited to be talking about women and how you make money, how do you make more money. And truly, I know that the topic is really centered today around negotiating practically anything. So as soon as you give me the go ahead, like when you're ready, we can keep rolling and I will dive right in. We're going to go deep and we are going to talk about emotional intelligence. So I'm expecting an amazing conversation today.
Awesome. Great, great, great. Okay, so we aren't going to read what's here on the screen. Olivia will share more of her personal journey as she feels comfortable doing so, as she reflects on your questions here today that you have submitted previous to this chat. But Olivia, I just want to ask you, how can we connect with you when this conversation is over? How can we find you online and support the great work that you're doing?
Okay, so there's a couple. Let me put it in the chat. Obviously, connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also find me at salarycoaching.com, oliviajarris.com, and I do have a free Women in Money Facebook community. If it's all right, I'm just going to put it here in the chat. It's totally free group. We do free audio trainings, all sorts of goodies and such, where you can just kind of like learn more, get your feet wet, and start making more money.
Yes, how exciting. Awesome. Great. Okay, so let's roll right into setting up the conversation here. So, Olivia, I'd love for you to touch on the principal themes that you're going to lead us with here for the next hour.
All right. So the three main topics that, as you have right here, is like, first of all, is really understanding some simple tools, very perhaps basic things that you never realized that you already had as a female, as a woman inside of you, that actually make you the stuff of legends when it comes down to negotiations, and actually makes you really better, let's face it, than men at negotiating practically anything and everything you want to be earning, right? And how do you go about setting yourself up with the right tools that, again, you already have? Like, how do you position yourself in order to negotiate what you deserve? What kind of strategies? How do you structure the negotiation? I'm going to give you all sorts of tools so you can actually do that. And then how to troubleshoot and stay focused while negotiating. So, like, how to help you pivot whenever you get that no or that pushback or you get stonewalled. We're going to talk about all of those things today.
Awesome. Great. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can get some face-to-face time here virtually, of course. So I'm just going to invite my live callers to put the speaker mode on. So, or you can put the gallery mode on. If we get more folks turning their cameras on, you can see all the folks who are joining us today. So again, that was a low-key invitation to go ahead and turn your cameras on if you feel called to do so. Hey, Meg. Hey, Meredith. I see you with your cameras on. I appreciate you. All right. So let's roll into these awesome questions that folks have submitted previous to the chat. If you hear your question come up, again, hop off mute or write in the chat box. Let us know that this was your question. If this is not your question and you're still interested in speaking about it, again, hop off mute, write in the chat box. So let's start with this first question here, Olivia. How did you learn the art of negotiation? Would love to know your story.
Well, wow, that's kind of like a very long story to talk about. But you see, when it came down to it, like in my former career, in my corporate life, I worked setting salaries for C-suite executives. I basically, like, my background is in compensation and in figuring out people's market value, which is something that everybody has. You are worth tangibly dollars and cents in your relevant market. Whether you like it or not, you have a price tag, let's put it that way, right? So that's what I spent the early part of my career doing, and setting salaries on behalf of whether it was international human resource agencies or C-suite or companies that were doing consulting for C-suite executives, creating golden parachutes, and big companies, basically setting price tags on people. And what I realized over the years is that there was a lot of talk about this gender wage gap thing. And if I'm very honest, I got really mad when I read this particular op-ed by Sheryl Sandberg on the New York Times, where she was blaming the gender wage gap and saying that, like, let's be honest, at this point in time, I didn't actually believe there was a gender wage gap, all right? Don't kill me just yet. I did not believe there was a gender wage gap. But I read this open ed, and Sheryl Sandberg was blaming companies and governments on the gender wage gap, and that there weren't enough transparency measures and that companies weren't doing enough. And I got furious. I was so mad because I was like, I'm the one setting the salaries for tens of thousands of people. And I'm being completely unbiased when it comes down to whether it's a woman or a man or gender or race. And there's enough government regulations, and my companies do want to pay fairly. But yet here we are complaining about a gender wage gap. So I'm actually going to go out and prove that there's no gender wage gap at this point in time, right? So I went out and looked through the tens of thousands of salary recommendations that I had given hiring managers and recruiters and headhunters and department managers who were extending offers. And what I realized when I started looking at the data was that indeed there was a gap. So I was like, whoa, what gives? I was being very impartial, very neutral to all of these things. Like, how is it that the identified hires, the women and men who were being hired, were very unequal, right? Women were being hired in hovering around the 25th percentile of what I'd recommended, while men were being hired hovering around the 50th percentile of what I'd recommended. So I was like, okay, something's wrong here. So I went down that rabbit hole and realized that when it came down to it, it wasn't that the companies didn't want to pay fairly. At least most of them wanted to be equal in terms of pay. They didn't want to get into hot water. And there were enough government regulations to ensure, at least here in the US, equal pay. But when it came down to it, and in talking to the hiring managers and the women involved in the negotiations, what it came down to was that women either didn't know their worth, or even if they didn't know what they were worth, they didn't know how to actually ask for it. At that point, I was like, time to quit my sweet corner office job. This is my calling. Because this is the reason, from my vantage point, that we really do have a gap, is that women either don't know what they're worth, or even if they do, they don't know how to advocate for it. So that took me into finding the best mentors that I could possibly encounter. And one of them, he's a former FBI director, Joe Navarro. He became my negotiation body language expert mentor, who, this is probably over a decade ago. He really taught me everything about hostage negotiations and how to apply that over to women and getting paid what they deserve.
Sorry, I was just making a note. Hostage negotiations. Wow. Make sure to ask her more about that. That's crazy. I love the dark rabbit hole that you went down and that you, I guess, stumbled upon because you didn't realize that there was that this reality existed for a lot of folks. I feel like the fact that you went to seek mentorship is something that I love in this conversation and that you're highlighting, because more often than not, the importance of mentorship pops up in just knowing your self-worth, especially so that you can have that sounding board, and you can have that mirror also to let you know, hey, this worked for me, or this this might work for you, instead of we create these worlds in our minds and we say, okay, I'm not good enough, or maybe I can do it like this, or maybe you don't have that representation that shows women of color or women in the workforce. Historically, we have not had a place there. So you see, you then you have to put yourself in another place and say, well, am I worth that if I don't even see anyone in this position at this table? And you have you don't have a reference point. So I love that. Like, I'm curious just to see how you work with your clients and just all of the juice that came out of this revelation. So maybe we can find out more about that with these questions. I just also I want to gauge our live callers, since I know this is going to be really chewy already. The first response is like, wow, I want to learn so much more. I'm taking notes here. Let us know where you are in your journey. Do you are you looking to know your self-worth? Let's be, as real as that. Or are you looking to negotiate a higher salary? Are you looking to career pivot? Where are you in your journey, so that we can maybe go in deeper here on these questions? Would just love to have you all drop that in the chat box. If you have really sensitive information, you can write to me privately and I'll keep you anonymous. But I would just love to see where our live callers are today. With that said, let's move on to this next question. What are the best resources or tools to get a good sense of the appropriate salary range for a role?
All right, so I'm very, very biased when it comes down to answering that question. You see, as a compensation expert, like, I will always say, buy market data, reach out to salarycoaching.com. We buy live market data so that we can help our women figure out their market value. Because there's a lot of platforms out there. There's like Glassdoor, there's salary.com, all of these databases that are free, that give you free data, that in the eyes of compensation, in the eyes of every single Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 company that actually has a compensation or an HR department and uses salary surveys, that data is truly junk data, because it relies on people like you or I to be accurate with regards to the data that we report in. They rely on humans who are prone to error. Like, if you're not an expert in compensation, you don't know necessarily exactly how to report what's your base salary, what's your total comp, do you include non-compensable items such as reimbursement for tuition, all of these numbers. And this just, even though you might know what you're doing, a lot of people don't know what they're reporting into these surveys. So when you go into a job or salary negotiation, generally speaking, you bring a printout from one of these sites, you're like, well, but Glassdoor said this, or well, but this other website said this. What you're gonna find is that you're gonna receive pushback from the hiring manager, and you're gonna receive like yeah, but we don't actually see that as a valid data source. And what ends up happening there is that most women feel like that backbone that they thought was that true number that they were bringing to the negotiation table, like crumbles over and falls completely apart in the negotiation. So this is why one of the things that we do at Salary Coaching is we give you that backbone. Like, we have a team of compensation experts that do a market pricing analysis in the same way that a compensation department is doing the research and figuring out what are you worth relative to that position description, relative to that size of company, relative to that size of market. So there's multiple angles through which you need to anchor your lens with regards to what you're worth. One of them being geography. Where are you, right? What is the market? What's your industry? Is it a hot industry, or is it an industry that, truth be told, there's a huge pool of applicants for, right? Say, for example, right now, hiring for IT, software engineers are very much more a hot market than perhaps the entertainment industry or the hotel and hospitality industry, right? It just kind of goes with the markets. Markets go up and down. Same goes with industries and such. Then, of course, there's like the size of the company. Where are they in their own growth pattern? Like, there's a lot of different factors that you can't gauge if you don't have an expert truly market pricing you. And this is something that most women in particular find themselves at a disadvantage. But usually when a guy goes into negotiation, they fib that number. They're like, I think that I'm worth this. I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna go with it. If a woman goes with it, goes with whatever number she has in mind or she's even researched, but she receives even an ounce of pushback from a hiring manager, generally what ends up happening is that she will basically recoil and settle and be like, okay, I was wrong. This person automatically assumed this person's right. So I'm going back into my hole, not negotiating again, taking whatever it is they give me. So your number needs to be your backbone. And the way, if I'm very honest with you, that you find it is you get live market pricing data.
So I'm curious to hear what you think about, I mean, especially now, during the pandemic, and there were a lot of folks who were working remotely, living globally, working remotely, as a lot of jobs are being created in the digital space. How can we make sure that we're honoring people's time and their work if they live in another part of the world? Let's say, because I have this, we need to speak privately, because I feel like I know some amazing designers in Mexico, or I know some great software engineers in, different parts of the global South. And I feel like, oh, well, for me, it's kind of bizarre and a little unfair that this is the way that it is right now. So maybe I'm asking for change collectively, but for me, it's a little unfair that someone who's doing, the same software engineer role work that someone in San Francisco would do, but they're doing it in, let's say, Argentina, because it's cheaper to live in Argentina, they get paid less, but everyone in the world is accessing this product digitally. I would just love for you to give any of your expert opinion on that. How can we keep that balance? How can we make sure people aren't getting taken advantage of, and so that people can live in different places of the world, or they can be from different places of the world, but still, be in this competitive market that is technology in the digital space?
Yeah, and it's a tricky subject for sure, because the truth of the matter is there is such a thing as a cost of living adjustment. So companies outsource overseas for that exact same reason, right? Because they know that if you're a software developer in Argentina or in the Philippines, they don't have to pay the same as if you're a software developer in Silicon Valley, right? So that's when it comes down to like the broadening of a market, if you will, right? Because perhaps, unless again, I do a lot of work for companies like Google and folks in Silicon Valley. It's like a lot of these people, right? Before, software engineers, just to pick a particular career, right? There weren't that many, and they were mainly centralized in the Bay Area, in the California area, and they could charge a pretty penny because there weren't that many of them. But with globalization, the way that we have expanded, right, that kind of knowledge, that specialized knowledge, is no longer as specialized anymore. Now you do have it in the Philippines, you do have it all over the world, Bangladesh, India, wherever it is that they're outsourcing this kind of talent. And it's becoming more commoditized. So your attempt to battle that commoditization is kind of futile. Like, it's not really going to work in the same way that you would want it to. The only way forward for people who are finding themselves like, oh, I'm a software engineer and I'm earning okay, but like my work is being outsourced overseas, like what do I do, is really truly moving a little bit further up that ladder into hyper specialization. So specializing into your particular niche and finding truly what I call your genius zone is so important, because you really cannot fight that tide. Why? Because it's really, think of it as a ladder, right? That those people in Bangladesh who are now becoming software engineers, like probably decades ago, were, you know, in the clothing industry, like sewing and seamstresses and such, and now they're becoming more educated in the same way that like we're becoming more educated. So it's kind of like this ladder. It's just that Western countries, most Western countries are a little bit further up in that ladder. So if you stay here and they start climbing up, there's just no way around it. There's going to be a leveling playing field. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And I appreciate your opinion. I know that was kind of going off course, but I find it so relevant now. I have lots of people asking me questions, and I'm not a financial expert as you are. So I just wanted to bring that to the conversation because I know we also have a global community here that tunes in. So thank you for sharing that reflection. This is a great time to move on to this next question, though. So how can we negotiate our salary when we're pivoting to a new industry? How can I show my value for the company if my background isn't related to their field?
Yeah, that's a great. I help a lot of women, or my team and I help a lot of women pivot careers, pivot industries. And at its core, most women go into it kind of like exactly how you phrased that question, is like, how do I position myself when I'm in a completely different background going into this new industry? Like, that question alone already presumes that you're coming from a lesser stance into this new industry. Like, you're coming as someone who doesn't know enough. While as my recommendation in that kind of situation is like, pivot yourself, reframe the situation so that what you're bringing to the table is an innovation, is an advantage to them that they currently don't have, that they can't see the forest through the trees because they don't have the background that you're bringing to the table. And unless you understand how to reframe that, you are gonna, like, people perceive you in the way that you put out the energy. So if you feel insecure, if you feel like you're less than coming into their industry, they're gonna perceive you as less than. But if you can understand that what you're bringing to the table is unique and they don't actually usually have that kind of background in their team, you can position yourself as like fresh air, as someone who's like bringing new ideas and more relevant visions that can truly help expand the vision of the organization.
I love that innovation piece because, of course, now these are unprecedented times in general, and then especially in the technological space. You know, you don't. It's funny that folks. I find that we are reshaping the way that we define technologists. Like, it's the technologist isn't just the person that's programming and developing, it's also the people that are marketing and working on, the product, and working on sales, and working on developing things as well, outside of the back end. So I love this innovation piece, because yeah, we definitely have a lot of room to grow, and hopefully we can do it more with you know uh something that is showing us our worth. And so I love that you started with this price tag, and you were like it or not, you have a price tag. Some people want to say, like, no, you can't put a price on what I do, but then, well, that's not helpful for you or for the person that wants to hire you. So I also love that you were stating that realness and trying to figure out how to navigate those waters where you have to be real. Okay, like, I'm a person who has this talent, I have this passion, I love to do this work. How do I put a number to that? Okay, cool. I go and I do my investigation. I maybe try to find some mentors. I find some people who can give me any kind of insight on, okay, what is it like to be in this role? And, how do I then put my value on it based on, what the market is saying. So I love these highlights that you're bringing to the surface here. And speaking of highlights, I want to just reflect on some folks who are writing in the chat box, letting us know a little bit about their background, so that, Olivia, you can take this into the account for the duration of this conversation. So Meg writes, I am trying to determine my price tag and preparing to negotiate a raise with my current company where I have been for 5 years. And then we have a private message that says, yes, please expand on how we can use hostage negotiation techniques to negotiate. Smiley face.
Yeah.
And then we have Julie, who writes, I am starting the search for my next role, and I'm trying to determine what my market price is. We have another person here who is writing. I don't want to call you out here because I know you're currently working, and I don't want them to spill the beans here on you yet. So someone writes, I was recently promoted and I feel I should have gotten a greater increase in compensation. Would like to do a better job next time around. So I'm keeping you anonymous just in case people from your work are listening here. But yeah, please talk about this, Olivia, because that kind of thing where it's like, in hindsight, I should have asked for this, and then what do you do in that situation? How can you move forward, and still feel like, not have resentment, let's say, because you didn't negotiate the price that you thought you should have gone for. And then finally, Jenny writes, this reframing suggestion regarding pivoting a field is good. Looking at showcasing the gap you fill. Perfect. Okay. So Olivia, I would love to just hear you comment on these responses here.
So all of those questions really tie into leverage, right? How are you showcasing yourself? So when it comes down to your market value, you can have a number, which truly, the only purpose of having an actual number or a range of like what you should be paid is to give you the backbone in a negotiation, so that whenever you receive pushback, when you receive a no, like, we're not going to pay you that, you understand that a no right now doesn't mean a no forever. And in fact, in my world, a negotiation hasn't even started until you hear no. Like, if you got everything you asked for without hearing pushback, that means that wasn't a negotiation in the first place. They just gave you what they were willing to give you. So for me, a negotiation doesn't actually start until you hear a no, right? So that number that you're getting is really like the backbone of what you're going to be using in the conversation. It's kind of like a tool in your toolkit. But what really matters is how you position your brand. Now, whether you like it or not, every single one of you ladies in here has a personal and professional brand. Every single one of you, whether you're working right now or not, you have a brand. And if you're like, yeah, but I'm not, that's actually not true. I'm not on social media. I'm not on LinkedIn, what have you. Like, that's your brand right there. People can't see you. And that's a way that they perceive you already, whether you like it or not. Now, most of you ladies probably already have a LinkedIn profile, and that is showcasing you 24/7, whether you like it or not. Now, here, total shameless plug, I teach on LinkedIn. So if you are interested in learning more about our workshops or what have you, just private message me, drop me a line, whatever it is, olivia@salarycoaching.com. And the reason why I've chosen to really become a master at LinkedIn and a super user on LinkedIn is because your professional brand is being showcased there 24/7. And a lot of people are like, yeah, but why would I want to have a LinkedIn profile? And the truth of the matter is, LinkedIn, contrary to all of these other like job search platforms and what have you, like, even though LinkedIn is a great platform for you and I to network, and there's over 600 million users on it, what LinkedIn is really good at and where they make their money is on the talent solutions side of the platform. So that's where headhunters, recruiters, and hiring managers hang out looking for people like you. So if you want to put the finger back on the pulse of your market, my biggest suggestion for you would be get that LinkedIn profile optimized and get it to the point where you're going to show up on the lists of the recruiters, headhunters, and hiring managers that are looking for people like you. Because truth of the matter is, if you can do that, if you can position your brand the way that you want it to be showcased, you're not going to have to be buying market data. You're not going to have to hire people like me to help you figure out your market value and how to negotiate. Why? Because leverage is going to come to you. Opportunities are going to find you. Does that make sense? So make your
Absolutely.
brand work for you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Olivia. And actually, just because I love putting things into practice during these conversations, for those of you who want to drop your LinkedIn or your preferred way of connecting, please do that in the chat box. And I encourage folks to reach out to maybe, one or two, however many people that have decided to drop their LinkedIn or their, preferred way of connecting in the chat box. I'll do mine as well because I want to, practice what I preach.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and so especially, that Olivia is highlighting LinkedIn, I'll be real. I have social media resistance. I don't know why. Actually, I do know why, but that would take a whole nother hour to talk about. So, but actually, LinkedIn is my preferred social media, platform because, like you said, you can make it work for you. You can show your value. You can, figure out what's happening on the scene. And because I love speaking about emotional intelligence, I find that, as of, I don't know, the end of last year, more people started to speak about emotional intelligence. There's so much research that has yet to be done. So I loved seeing people post about emotional intelligence, for example. And I find that happening more often on LinkedIn than I do on a Twitter or, on an Instagram. So I see we've got folks already dropping their LinkedIns. Feel free to do so. I just wanted to give out the official invitation. Any other comments you wanted to share with us, Olivia, based on what folks were writing in the chat box?
Well, yeah. So when it comes down to and I know somebody asked if they had been promoted, that they had been promoted and they thought that they kind of settled with that increase and they want to set themselves up for success next time. So the way that I want you to stage your negotiation, and this is for anyone and everyone who is coming up on any negotiation in the near future, is I really want you to understand, again, this comes down to emotional intelligence. When it comes down to emotional intelligence for women and just these traits that us females have, and this is regardless of your gender affiliation, okay? So I want to be really clear with that. Women, females are born with certain traits, like multitasking, for example, who here is not multitasking right now? Most of you ladies are not on camera, but I bet you'd be raising your hands, right? You're watching this, you're probably listening to this while you're in another browser, you're checking email, you're doing all sorts of things. Why? Because as women, we can multitask. You could be taking care of kids while watching, while listening, while doing all sorts of things at the same time, right? So this is most of the time we see this as a huge flaw when it comes down to women, is oh, your head's all over the place. And men, generally speaking, are monofocused. Now, and this is kind of a very stereotypical example, but I'm going to use it anyway. It's a girl and a guy go on a date. The guy is thinking, great, this might be perfect. It might work out. If not, whatever, we're going to have a good time, a good meal. The woman, she's thinking, what am I going to wear tonight? What am I going to order? Am I going to order the expensive thing or the not so expensive thing? Did I wash my underwear? Did I put deodorant on? What if I don't really like his parents? What if we get married, have kids, and then it doesn't work out? But he's kind of cute. It doesn't matter. We're thinking through a million different case scenarios, a million different things at any given point in time. While as guys don't have that superpower. And it is truly a superpower. And I want you to understand that, especially when it comes down to negotiations. As women, we've been trained to give away that power and make it feel like it's almost like a flaw of ours that we can do that. And when we do that, when we give away that power, all we end up doing is turning that superpower inwards and using it against ourselves. So it ends up becoming that sense of imposter syndrome, that sense of I'm not good enough. What are they thinking of me? Oh my gosh, I definitely didn't do that well for them to give me that raise, or I'm definitely not good enough. Like, we spin that ability to multitask, we like spin it inwards, and we end up thinking we're super shitty, right? Does that resonate with anyone in here? Like, that's what we tend to do. But what I want you to understand is that world-class negotiators, when you ask the best of the best negotiators, and I've been in rooms with many of the world's top negotiators, when you ask them, I'm talking like FBI negotiators, hostage negotiators, who do you think is the best negotiator, hands down, in this world? And every single one of them, can you guys guess in the chat who the world's best negotiation expert is? Does anybody here know?
I don't know, but let's see if anyone on the call knows, or you can hop off mute and voice it. Jack Welch, Meg says.
Interesting.
All right. Keep going. Anyone else want to guess?
Not quite. I'll leave it out there. No, so here's the thing. The world's best negotiator is actually a woman. And she's actually been able to master these tools, these superpowers, and use them to read her targets and understand not only what they're saying and understanding the energy around the room, reading the person, reading the words, how to build trust, how to build bonds. And ladies, every single one of you guys knows who this person. I'm willing to bet you've heard her.
I want to say Oprah Winfrey, or like a Beyonce. I don't know. Oprah Winfrey. Okay, good.
Oprah Winfrey. She is revered hands down as the world's best negotiator. She can get anyone on her stage, whether it's her Sunday show or the show that she used to have, to confess anything and everything that she wants. She has figured out how to use all of these like female traits that we've been taught that they're like the traits that you're supposed to leave at home, right? To be nurturing, to be emotional, to be humble, empathetic, supportive, all of those traits that we've been taught, like those are the motherly skills. Leave them at home. You bring those tools to the table. You don't have to be assertive and direct and uncompromising the way that we've been taught negotiators go about landing their whatever it is that they want. So when you're thinking about future negotiations, right, I want you to understand that you already have a leg up on the negotiation. What I would suggest that you do, if you're currently being underpaid, set the stage for the conversation, set the stage for negotiation in the future, where you're doing the groundwork by using all of these tools that you already have, like this ability to nurture, build trust, be empathetic, and make them feel like you got their back, right? Whether it's actually true or not doesn't really matter. Hopefully it's true, because people can kind of perceive when you're not being genuine. But then that's how you set the stage so that when actual negotiation day happens, it's a breeze. It's a breeze. And if it's okay, Mariella, can I kind of give you a really quick negotiation primer on how to set the conversation up?
Go for it. Totally.
Awesome. Great. So first things first, right? You've scheduled out your conversation. You're going to have a one-on-one with your boss, and you're ready to go negotiate, right? On negotiation day, I want you to understand that you can and you should be ready to shift that superpower that we've been talking about, that ability to multitask, to read the situation, read the room, do whatever it is that you need to do, like do your yoga, do your meditation, whatever it is that you need to do in order to like get out of your head, so that we can turn that superpower externally, so that you can be very much in tune with what's happening around you, right? So that you can read the energy in the room, so that you can understand, just even from the cadence of the words, from the body language of your negotiation counterpart, whether it's the right time to be negotiating or you should abort the mission, right? So when you're able to use these superpowers, which you already have, and I can go into so much more depth about this, but we don't have enough time today, you're going to turn those superpowers externally, because I want you to be reading the room, reading the person, reading the words, and using your own energy to kind of project this trust. So the first thing that you're going to do in the conversation is I want you to butter them up, like flat out butter them up, and make them feel understood and respected. Make them feel like, come hell or high water, you guys are on good terms, they can trust you, right? And if you're going to ask for a raise or ask for more money, what I want you to do is not antagonize them, not alienate them by being direct, assertive, uncompromising. This is what I want to get paid, this is what I deserve, which is what we've been taught to negotiate and to do in the workforce, kind of like a guy does it. But instead, I want you to partner with them. I want you to ask for their help, kind of like an Oprah would do, right? And own the responsibility. Say, hey, boss, listen, I really appreciate the work that we've been doing, butter them up. I think the projects that we're working on, the vision of the company is fantastic. I love where we're headed. That said, I need your help. And you leave that pause there for them to open up the space to have the conversation, right? You don't fill in the void. This is something that, ladies, if you've heard of that pause, most women tend to cave in that pause and give away their power through that pause. So you're going to ask for help. Wait for them to say, absolutely, how can I help you? Well, you see, I've been realizing over time, because I don't know, recruiters on LinkedIn have been kind of pinging me with different opportunities, that perhaps I should have come to you a little bit earlier. But the truth of the matter is, I haven't been keeping track of my market value over the last few years. And I've come to realize, or it's come to my attention, that perhaps I should be asking for something closer to $150,000 per year. Can you help me get to that? Now, this is where the negotiation starts. If you get a yes, sure, I'll pay you $150,000. You have not even entered a negotiation. Ladies, I want you to get ready and expect a no. A negotiation does not start until you hear no. If you got an immediate yes, you were just screwed over. You were given what they were willing to give you already, right? So I would expect a no. No, because it's not in the budget. You're going to have to end up peeling these different layers of the conversation, because truth be told, that first no is more than likely not going to be the real reason why they can't give you what you're asking for. It is more than likely going to be just your counterpart trying to recenter themselves, ground themselves, and feel in control of the conversation. And that's okay. You don't want to have a conversation with someone who feels like they're not on solid footing. That's truly all you're going to get, is like a yeah. And then they're going to come back and say no, right? Something's going to fall through and you're not actually going to get what you want. So allow them that space to say no. And once they say that no, you want to acknowledge them and you want to accept their position. Say, I completely understand that it's not in the budget. That makes sense. Like, acknowledge their no, allow them to be grounded in their footing. And then you pivot. How can I help bring that income or help generate that revenue so that it is a part of the budget next time, or like within the next 6 or so months? Can we work together to help me figure this out so that we can get there, right? Like, you're helping them peel the onion. Next thing you're going to hear is another no, more than likely. Like, no, because we're out of cycle for budget increases or pay increases. I completely understand. You acknowledge and accept that position. And then you help them solve that problem. You're going to peel another layer of the onion. And honestly, you're probably going to do this for like 3 to 4 layers until you finally find the true no, like the real reason. And more than likely, it's something completely unrelated, right? It's going to be like, okay, well, no, it's because, well, you're bumping up to so and so in terms of salary already. So I don't really know how to get that through HR. Oh, I see. That completely makes sense. Acknowledge and accept their position again. And then you go to like, okay, well, could we work together to promote me up into that new level and get me up to that point? And until you find that, like that core, right, you're probably going to receive no's going circles and circles and circles until you help them solve the true no, which is finally going to cave into the, all right, let me go talk to HR. Let's see what we can do. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think it's fascinating that you speak of it as a partnership. And also, I hear this persistence, that's like, okay, let's peel off the first layer. I'm expecting a no. Okay, let's try to peel off the second layer. And you're actually trying to solve something because, like you said, it could get down to this point, which is essentially a management issue. I don't know how to show that you are worth as much as this person. It comes down to the person that's in front of you. It has nothing to do with the budget of whatever. It's that. So I think that's interesting to, dive deep there, and just be comfortable with that persistence, because I know oftentimes we don't want to be, I don't know, stepping on toes or whatever, but we got to step on some toes sometimes to get what we need. With that said, we've got a little over 10 minutes. I just want folks to know. So I want to hold for a light pause to see if someone wants to hop off mute and voice a question or reflection. I will hold for a light pause, and now is your time to shine. If you want to ask Olivia something or reflect with her, now's your time to shine. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. And it's okay if it doesn't. But yes. Oh, yes, Olivia, go for it. What were you saying?
Oh, Meg, go for it. I see Meg has a
question. I hate awkward silence. Olivia, do you think, like, I have a stand-up meeting with my boss every Friday where we talk, and I manage people too, so we talk about a bunch of things. Do you think I should give them a heads up, like 2 days before, saying that, hey, I want to talk about my salary, or, or do I just get into my one-on-one with them on the standard and bring it up then?
I would set the stage. Remember, this is like, and if you think about it really, like, internally, something within you has been preempting this conversation perhaps for a while, right? You've been thinking about it for some time. And that's where, like, ladies, you're super intuitive, and I want you to listen to that. There is a good reason for that. And that's because you're probably better suited to set the stage for that conversation than just springing it on them. So the way that I would do it is perhaps communicate in your next meeting, or perhaps even not in live person, but maybe through email, is like, let's call him Joe, right? Hey, Joe, I have loved working here for years, and I think we're doing some amazing things. And again, butter them up, right? Make him feel like you've got his back. Because remember, at the end of the day, Joe is a human being. As much as he may or may not be your boss, we all are on what's called the hero's journey, right? We are all supremely selfish, and we see the world from our own vantage point. And if you understand that, you understand that any conversation that Joe is having with any of his or her employees is going to be a judgment on him. And that's either going to be a positive judgment or a negative judgment. So if you can position yourself and say, like, Joe, listen, I love the work that we're doing here and what we've been doing over the years. And I want to have a conversation with you about how to map out the future of my career here and to continue growing. Do you see why we're doing that? Like, why that would be kind of like setting the stage to influence your conversation with Joe in a very positive way. And here's one thing that I'd love to kind of mention to you ladies, is that one of the reasons why we have a very negative and like anxiety producing feeling towards negotiations is that, let's face it, men were the ones to first hit the scene when it came down, like post-industrial revolution, when we created this modern day workforce. Men were the ones to go to work. Women were staying at home, right? Taking care of the kids in the fields and the crops and whatever there was remaining. And men were the ones who went and got to set the stage for what it looked like to be successful in the workforce. And even though that is changing over the years, we still feel like we have to emulate this pattern that was left from that, right? From the Industrial Revolution days. So your gut feeling is always right. And I want to encourage you ladies to listen in very deeply to that.
I love that. I love that advice to come back to our intuition. I offer workshops on the Positive Force team doing just that, because I feel like it's a lost art based on what you're just saying now. Historically speaking, women have not had the space to define and set the rules. We have to go in there, clean it up, and then figure, okay, what do we want to do now? So I love this, reflection on coming back to our intuition, listening to our gut, strengthening that up so that then we can move forward and move out into the world and be our, best selves. So Olivia, thank you I'm like throwing digital confetti there for you. I have someone who is, I have someone here who's written in the chat, Jing Chen writes, in the job search stage, is it possible to ask for a higher salary after you've gone through all interviews and realize you might deserve a higher salary than what you originally talked with HR?
Yeah, so that's one of those situations where I'm like, you really should know your market value at any given point in time. So like, this is where like I'm gonna like kind of lay it down here, is that this is why it's so important, in particular right now, that you have an updated LinkedIn profile, because I want opportunities finding you. I don't want you to ever find yourself in this kind of situation where you're like, oh, I undersold myself. No, you should have the pick of the litter when it comes down to job opportunities. And you can, if you actually believe that you're deserving of that kind of opportunity. So when it comes down to this situation, can you troubleshoot it? Yes, but I would rather you always be ready to come into the conversation, because you're constantly entertaining conversations with recruiters and headhunters. Like, I don't want you to ever find yourself in a situation where you're like, oh, I could have asked for more, right? But if you are in that situation, if you find yourself in a situation where you're like, I undersold myself, how do I fix this? What I would do is, again, partner with the person in question in your conversation, your counterpart, and say, hey, I'm ecstatic to take this job. Accept the job offer, right? You accept the full on job offer, but ask for help when it comes down to the salary. I don't want you to risk rescinding the offer because you're asking for more money. So you accept the job offer and then say, can you help me get to this salary? Or can you help me get to what I've realized is a more accurate reflection of my market value, which is $150,000 per year. Can you help me? Leave that pause. They're going to say no. Peel the onion as many times as you need to so that you can get to where you want to. But odds are, if you're in this position, it might be a no for right now. It might be a we can't right now, but maybe we can revisit this conversation in 3 months. And I want you to set the stage for that review right then and there in that conversation. Does that make sense? So I want you, Jing Chen, to make sure that you're setting the stage to have that conversation in 3 to 6 months from now. You actually leave that meeting with like an appointment, and you'll be like leaving the conversation and you say, hey, would it be okay for me to like set that conversation in our calendars so that we can make it happen? And like, be upfront about it. Just say like, I want to make sure that I'm meeting your expectations. So can I set that meeting up for 6 months from now? And they'll be like, of course, of course.
I love that. I love this advice. And also something that I have been hearing as I interview more women about this particular, moment that comes up often for us, depending if we're career pivoting or if we're just moving up in our careers, to have that brag folder as well. Like, so you can come to this guy or this girl or this, whoever's on the other side of the table and say, hey, I've done all of these things. I've got all this great feedback. I'm being asked to do all these great things. So, just to put some fire behind asking for more, let's say, so people can see and remember. There's so many things going on in the day. They can remember, oh, yeah, such and such did a great job with this. And we keep getting asked to do the same thing that this person did. So great. And Jing Chen writes, thank you so much. She's learned so much from your response. So I appreciate that reflection as well. So Olivia, we have about 4 minutes left. Is there anything else you want to cover? Leave us with some food for thought as well. You can take the rest of the 4 minutes just to talk about whatever you want to talk about, and make sure you also remind us how we can connect with you when we finish this conversation.
Well, absolutely. You can connect with me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or in our Facebook community. Like I said, we do have a free community where I teach women more techniques and strategies on money. I have the link here. Feel free to join in if that's all right. And then obviously find me, Olivia Jarris. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to message me if you have more questions, or you're like, how do I deal with this particular situation? Now, I am on Thursday, I believe. We're doing a live workshop, but so my genius zone, one of my genius zones, aside from negotiation, is helping women kind of become opportunity magnets on LinkedIn. So I often host these kind of workshops where I teach you how to position your brand on LinkedIn so that you can, again, like, be attracting opportunities while you sleep, so that you just tap into your LinkedIn profile like a couple of times a year and leave it on autopilot so you can trigger the algorithm on LinkedIn for opportunities to find you. Now, the workshop on Thursday, though, is more centered for entrepreneurs. If you're like a coach or you want to become a speaker and you're trying to get speaking engagements and kind of rise professionally up the ranks, we're teaching a workshop on that. So if you message me, I'll be happy to give you the details on that and secure a spot. We keep them small, really small, just because I want to make sure that I'm tailoring the results and like the help for everyone. But if you're interested, just let me know. But other than that, yeah, if you guys have questions, just private message me. Let me see if I have my LinkedIn profile here. Let me pop it in too.
That's great. And then just so that our live callers know as well, you all will be receiving a rewatch email with some links that Olivia will plug in there, which will be these links that are in the chat box as well. So look out for that rewatch email. If you're watching this recording, I encourage you all to, connect with Olivia on her LinkedIn and go to her Facebook group as well. And so we have about 1 minute left. Can you leave us with, food for thought as we are thinking of how to negotiate, as we're, reclaiming our self-worth, moving into these scenarios? What's something that we can keep at the forefront of our minds, Olivia?
I would think that what I would love for you to take home and just think about is, if you don't know your worth, why are you expecting anyone else to know it? And why are you expecting anyone to pay you what you deserve if you don't even know what that is?
Yes, mic drop. Also, what would Oprah Winfrey do? That's like another thing I'm taking away from this conversation. What would Oprah Winfrey do? Okay, put it there, then try to get like her because she's queen, obviously. And then, know your self-worth. So thank you so much, Olivia. It's been great to have this conversation with you. And I see that the folks who have their cameras on are smiling as well. I love all the engagement in the chat box. So again, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you on the next chat.